Better World Blueprint. Good humans doing good things.
Sometimes it can feel like everyone is out for themselves and the world can be a hard place. But if you look a little bit closer, you'll find all the good people doing great things. And this podcast is where you'll find some of them. Welcome to A Better World Blueprint. I'm Siobhan Hunt. Every Thursday, I go to a church hall and sing my heart out with a bunch of kind, hilarious and generous women, which is where I found my guest today. Rebecca Allen is a careers coach whose aim is to get more women into leadership roles. She's one of my fellow altos in the choir, and her work is definitely making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy this chat with Rebecca Allen, careers coach at Illuminate. Hello, Rebecca. Welcome to A Better World Blueprint.
Hi, Siobhan. I'm so excited to be here. We've been talking about doing this for a little while, and I'm really, really excited to actually be on your show.
In between songs.
In between songs. We know each other from choir.
We won't sing here, though.
Well, you can. I think I'll reserve that one for someone else.
So talk to me about why you decided to start your own coaching business.
Wow, that's a big question. Well, I suppose my passion has always been in personal development. I've always been super interested in it. I've always read millions of books about it. I started off my career actually in advertising, and I did that for a number of years, and I ended up in a global advertising agency called JWC London. And I think that I kind of hit a wall with it. I think I've just felt a bit stuck and unsure that this was really the avenue for me forever. And I did this big sort of soul-searching thing. I remember actually sitting on a park bench in Hyde Park one lunchtime and asking myself this big question, Rebecca, what are you doing? Is this really what you want to be doing? And I knew it wasn't. I just didn't really understand what it was, if that makes sense. So I decided to explore one of my passion areas, which was personal development, and try and explore and understand that a bit more and see if I could become trained in anything to do with that. So I found the Life Coaching Academy in London, and it was fantastic. It was a really good experience because I'd never done anything like that before. And I did this sort of committed 6-month adventure, if you like, to understand how to become a life coach. So I did that initially. And of course, life coaching is a very generalist subject, hugely valuable. And it underpins a lot of the coaching that's out there, of course. I also then did some training in corporate coaching and to understand that a little bit more and how you can actually add value to people who are working in companies. I opened up my coaching practice at the weekend. And you know what I did, Siobhan? I put a sign up in my block of flats. I live with my husband, who's now my husband. He was my husband then. And I just said, does anybody want some help in the building? I'm here for you. What do you want to talk about? We can talk about anything. It was like, very general. And I got my first clients who were my neighbors in my block of flats. And I was in my late 20s. And I was like, I've got to start somewhere. How do we do this? No shame, let's just go for it, see what happens. And I was amazed actually how quickly you can actually add value to people who you don't really know from Adam. You've never met before because it was London, nobody spoke to their neighbours. That's the difference between here and Australia. Yeah, and it was fascinating. I thought it was fascinating, with the basic training that I had, how much I could help people. And that really inspired me, how much clarity I could help people get, how much more confidence I could help people get. And when we eventually moved to Australia, my husband and I, we backpacked actually in between, and we're like, we've got to get back to Australia. It's just the best place ever. So we worked hard and we moved here in 2007. And I just said to him, I've got to go for this. I just really, really want to go for this and set up my own thing, which was a lot harder than I had envisaged, setting up a new business in a new country, in a relatively new space for me as well. I was quite inexperienced then. And so the whole thing was a huge undertaking looking back on it. Probably not the best idea I've ever had. You know what? Throwing yourself in the deep end, I think often is a good thing to do. And over the last 15 years that I've been coaching now, I have grown hugely myself. I've had 2 kids, which has also changed me enormously and, makes you see things totally differently. But I've also niched. And I think the thing that's been really interesting is I sort of moved from that sort of generalist coaching into more career-based coaching. And I was coaching both men and women for a long time. And then I just decided, you know what, there are lots of problems that I see women having in corporate that are unique to them. You know, women are definitely having a different experience to men in the workplace. And like, quite frankly, everyone's having a different experience from everyone else in the workplace. And I think that's one of the big things that DEI is trying to, so diversity and inclusion policies are trying to shine a light on, because everybody is having a very different experience. And I think trying to pigeonhole people or shoehorn people into one box when actually people are all very, very different individuals is always a mistake. And I think people need career advice and career support that's unique to them and that is tailored to them. And if there's one thing that I've seen is women are definitely having, you know, a series of challenges that men just don't face. So I decided to start niching in that area of working with women and empowering women to move up into more positions of leadership within organizations. Because I find that women are very quick to undersell themselves, undervalue what they can actually offer. And so maybe don't sort of go for the best roles or don't put their hands up for the best opportunities. Meanwhile, we have these problems where, you know, women are struggling to get the sponsorship that they absolutely deserve. They're not getting the right advice. They're not getting the right mentoring either. And I think, and of course, we have things like bias and discrimination that are huge, huge challenges that are genuine barriers to women's success.
What percentage do you think in that mix is structural and how much is internal? And by that I mean, how much is that the way businesses have always operated and how much is that the internal monologue that women have themselves?
That's such a good question. Look, I think the reality is business was set up originally for men by men, and it hasn't adjusted quickly enough to the fact that all these very talented, very intelligent women are coming into the workforce, quite frankly, and are adding huge value. It's already the case that women sort of leave universities better qualified and they go on to do further study in higher numbers than men do. So they're entering the workforce better qualified. And yet we have these problems with pay gender gaps and we have all these problems right from the outset. It happens at grad level. And then this huge fall off in the mid-career where women are just not supported effectively to be able to move through the pipeline to those more senior roles. So I think it's a never-ending cycle of definitely a systemic challenge. It's well documented that there is bias and discrimination that impacts women's careers. And there are structural issues around keeping women in the workforce, particularly when they go off and potentially have children or they go off and care for elderly relatives, things like that. You know, we have issues with childcare here in Australia. It's everywhere. But, you know, that keeps women at home because they tend to be, you know, not the primary breadwinner. And so you have to make this economic decision as to who stays at home. And that has an impact. And of course, it's like constantly then this keeping up, you know, trying to grapple with getting back into the workforce when you're ready to go back into work. And often you're set back from the role that you were doing previously. You know, I've had that challenge for a lot of clients where they come back and they say, I've actually been offered a role I was doing 2 years ago and I'm better qualified for this. But then equally, those women might also then accept the role. So it is definitely an internal challenge. Can I do this? Am I worthy of this? Am I ready for this? 100% that's there. Should I even apply? That's definitely there as an internal barrier. And so I don't know what the percentage would be particularly, but I just see the two things are interlocked. But one thing I do know is that, you know, we're not a victim of our circumstance and we can choose to create outcomes for ourselves, whomever we are and whatever our circumstance, right? And I think that you can look at the systemic challenges around you and you can vote with your feet and you can opt to work in companies that do have really sensible, robust DEI policies in place that are genuinely looking to support women and have, you know, the structures in place to support women. Or you can choose to work in an organization where the culture is not supporting your total success. And that's definitely a choice that we can make.
There is so much in that, and it's such in some ways, an overwhelming issue to deal with. What have been your challenges in doing this business, whether it's on a philosophical level, because in a way, this is a big, big problem that lots of people, as you say, talk about and try to work out how to fix? Or are there more practical things that have been challenging for you? You mentioned you had 2 kids and that you've moved countries and started in a new industry. What would you say were your biggest challenges doing this work?
Oh my gosh, there have been many, many challenges, many mistakes. Um, it's funny because I'm a big believer in kind of doing and sort of thinking about it later, maybe. That's kind of the way I look at things. I've always been brought up to go for it and to try your best to just make things happen for yourself. And I think that, at the end of the day, I've learned that whatever happens, it's just an outcome. It's just a result that's happened. It's not an actual disaster. If you decide to frame anything as a disaster, of course it becomes one. But if you decide just to say, you know what, this may or may not work, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. But there have been lots of things. You can look back and you can say, should I have niched earlier, for example, than started this whole process earlier? Possibly. But if I'd done that, then I would have missed out on some of that earlier work that I did. There's always that counterbalance. And I think when you're building a business, I think it's a never-ending series of mistakes. People think about people setting up businesses and launching businesses and it being this phenomenal success overnight. And that's just not how it works. You have to try things and you have to experience failure sometimes to actually work out what you really want to do. And I've had loads of things that I've either launched and they've not worked, or, webinars that haven't been very well attended, or, all that kind of thing. You kind of go through this process. But I just think just learn from whatever's going on in there.
Do you think the work you're doing now has changed you?
But it's definitely changed me. I mean, I think that I've become hugely passionate about equity and about the challenges that people have, because I also see, the impact that the work that I do is obviously about women and helping women attain equity, which is about basically getting a seat at the table, making sure that there is equal decision making at any decision making table. And there are all sorts of statistics around that. Just one woman is not enough. You need something like 3 or 4 women in a room to actually persuade the men in the room around to that kind of decision making. But the other thing that's really interesting is that women of color, for example, are even more disproportionately impacted by this. And so a lot of my clients are women of color. And it's even more challenging in some respects for that, to the point where they'll sort of say to me, I've come from a different country. In the other country, I was fully qualified. Over here, I've had to retrain and re-qualify myself for the same role. And I come in and I'm in a lesser role. I mean, these things just aren't fair and they're not equitable. That's not how, we want to win in business. Research has told us repeatedly that having diverse thoughts, diverse experiences of people will make better decisions and ultimately make business more competitive. It's there, the research is there, regardless of what certain US presidents might think about it. It's nonsense. So it's taught me a lot about standing up for what you believe, I suppose, but also resolving to learn as much as I can about it, not just from a personal and professional perspective, but because I think society needs this, right? We need this system that is balanced, and we need equal opportunity for everybody. It's so very important. My vision and my mission at Illuminate, which is my business, is with more women leaders, we're making a better world. And I genuinely believe that, which is why it's such a great fit for your show, actually. I genuinely believe that we need more women at the table making decisions and helping people arrive at better decisions, because all the research tells us that is what is required to help us get there.
Have you got any examples of the impact you've seen of your work? Any clients in particular that stand out to you, that make you feel that you are achieving or moving forwards in your mission?
Yeah, that's such a lovely question. The obvious thing is negotiating for themselves and being much more effective at negotiating for themselves. I've had clients negotiate 30% pay rises, for example, which is just seismic, and it can change their lives. Obviously, getting promoted is another big thing. going for roles that they didn't think that they were capable of even going for, let alone, being successful in that interview. That's a massive, massive thing for me, because I think once you start helping somebody see sort of their true potential for themselves, let alone what other people can see of them, when they start realizing that they can go for those more stretching opportunities, roles, why not me? There's that huge empowerment that happens. Well, what else can I do? What else is possible? What else can happen here? One of my clients once sent me a photograph of a card. Her name was Kim. And she sent me a card, and it was a birthday card from her son to her. And he had written in this card, as a teenager, and he'd written in this card, "Dear Mom, I think you're amazing. I think you're lovely," and it was kind of happy birthday. And he said, "I'm just so proud of you that, that you invested in yourself," or whatever the words were he used, "over the last few months, because you've returned to us," kind of thing. And he was saying, "You've got this new job, you've got this promotion, and it's just so wonderful to see you backing yourself." And I swear I cried when I read this thing. I was like, that is just the most wonderful thing, that this kid has recognized in his mum that she has backed herself and decided the old job wasn't good enough, because it wasn't. She could do better. And she ended up, again, negotiating very well for herself and getting a really good new role. But I just thought, how fantastic that the work that I do with these women isn't just impacting them, it's also impacting their families. Because, of course, if you're not enjoying your job, or you feel unfulfilled or unrecognized or stuck, of course you're going to bring that home with you, and it's going to impact your family life too.
And you've probably you have created role models for the younger women, or women that are in that organisation, to see them doing that.
Yeah, well, that's a big, big deal, actually. Being able to demonstrate to kids. I mean, my 13-year-old's a girl. And I think it's really important to demonstrate to them all these fantastic opportunities that are there for them, and that they can do, what they want, and that they can back themselves. And these are skills that we should be taught so early, and we're just not taught these skills so early.
Yeah, well, it does sound like you're making a big impact. Rebecca, thank you so much for speaking with me.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Rebecca Allen, careers coach at Illuminate. As demonstrated in this chat, good people are everywhere. Like Rebecca, they could be singing beside you, or maybe that person next to you on the bus is doing great things. If you know someone making the world a better place, let me know. You'll find my email in the episode notes. I'm Siobhan Hunt. See you next time on A Better World Blueprint.